The betrayal. The message arrived on Captain Maya Reeves' terminal at exactly 400 Earth Standard Time, interrupting her much-needed sleep cycle. As Earth's senior representative to the Galactic Council, she had grown accustomed to urgent communications, but something about this one felt different. The transmission bore the emergency seal of the Council's High Command, a rare occurrence that sent a chill down her spine. "Computer, display message," she commanded, pushing herself upright in her quarters aboard the orbital diplomatic station Unity. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the elongated avian features of High Counselor Zhenfal. The Arcosian's feathered crest was flattened against his skull, a sign of extreme distress that Maya had learned to recognize during her 5 years of service. "Representative Reeves," Zhenfal began, his multitonal voice wavering slightly. "I transmit grave news. Our long-range sensors have detected a Vraxian battle fleet entering the Orion Spur. Their trajectory and speed indicate Earth as their destination. Arrival estimated in 14 standard days." Maya's blood ran cold. The Vraxians, every diplomat's worst nightmare. A highly advanced, ruthlessly expansionist species from the galactic rim, they were notorious for their strategy of total planetary appropriation. They didn't merely conquer. They transformed worlds to suit their physiological needs, rendering them uninhabitable to the original species. "The Council is convening an emergency session in 6 hours," Zhenfal continued. "Your presence is required. Prepare your arguments well, Representative. The situation is complicated." The transmission ended, leaving Maya staring at the empty space where the Counselor's image had been. Complicated in diplomatic speak usually meant hopeless, but she refused to accept that interpretation. After all, Earth had faithfully upheld its responsibilities to the Galactic Council for the 43 years since first contact. The Mutual Defense Pact was clear. An attack on one member world was an attack on all. As she dressed in her formal diplomatic attire, the deep blue uniform with the Earth insignia prominently displayed on the chest, Maya reviewed what she knew about the Vraxians from classified briefings. They traveled in massive, self-sufficient arcs that doubled as terraforming platforms. Their technology surpassed even that of the oldest Council races. Most concerning was their absolute conviction that their way of life was the only one worth preserving. All others were simply obstacles to be cleared. "Captain Reeves to the bridge," she called through the comm system. "Prepare for immediate departure to Nexus Station. Priority Alpha." "Acknowledged, Captain," came the prompt reply. "Engine warm-up initiated. Departure in 20 minutes." Maya gathered her data tablets and diplomatic credentials, her mind racing to formulate Earth's defense arguments. The Mutual Defense Pact would be her strongest position, but she also needed to highlight Earth's strategic importance as a biodiversity reserve and cultural repository. The Council valued such things, at least officially. The journey to Nexus Station, the massive artificial habitat that served as the Galactic Council's headquarters, took just under 3 hours through the recently established quantum corridor. Maya spent every minute preparing, consulting with Earth's Defense Ministry, and coordinating with a handful of other human diplomats stationed throughout Council space. Nexus Station never failed to inspire awe, even under such dire circumstances. The massive wheel-shaped structure, measuring over 30 kilometers in diameter, rotated majestically against the backdrop of a vivid blue nebula. Ships of all sizes and configurations swarmed around it like bees around a hive, representing the 347 species that comprised the Galactic Council. As Maya's diplomatic shuttle docked, she was met by her aide, Dr. Eli Chen, whose grim expression confirmed her worst fears. "It's bad, isn't it?" she asked as they hurried through the gleaming corridors toward the Grand Chamber. "Worse than bad," Eli replied, his voice low. "I've been working my contacts while you were in transit. The major powers are spooked. The Vraxians haven't launched an offensive of this scale in over 3 centuries. The Arcosians are pushing for a diplomatic solution." "Diplomatic?" Maya interrupted incredulously. "The Vraxians don't negotiate. Everyone knows that. Exactly. And the Tellerates are advocating for a strategic withdrawal from the entire sector. Maya stopped short, forcing a group of tall, willowy Felorians to navigate around them. Withdrawal. That's Earth's sector. They're talking about abandoning us. Eli's silence was answer enough. The grand chamber was already packed when they arrived, the tiered seating arranged in a perfect circle around the central speaking platform. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the space with a cacophony of voices, scents, and colors, a dizzying display of galactic diversity that ordinarily would have filled Maya with pride. Today, it only heightened her sense of isolation. High Counselor Jean-Fall called the session to order, the chamber's acoustic properties carrying his voice to every corner without electronic amplification. "We face a crisis not seen in generations," he began solemnly. "The Vraxian Dominion has mobilized a significant portion of their fleet, and their target appears to be the Sol system, specifically Earth." A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembly. Earth's representatives have been summoned to present their case for Council intervention under Article 7 of our Mutual Defense Charter. Representative Reeves, you have the floor. Maya stepped onto the central platform, feeling the weight of 7 billion human lives on her shoulders. The lighting adjusted automatically to accommodate human visual preferences, a small courtesy that suddenly seemed bitterly ironic. "Esteemed counselors," she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Earth stands at the precipice of an existential threat. The Vraxian fleet approaching our system consists of at least 37 capital ships and over 200 support vessels, according to our latest intelligence. Their capacity for planetary conversion is well documented, as are their refusals to engage in diplomatic negotiations." She paused, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. "I come before you today not only as Earth's voice, but as a reminder of our collective promise, the foundational principle that brought this council into existence. Together we stand against the darkness." Those were the words inscribed on the Charter of Union that Earth proudly signed 43 years ago. Today, I call upon that promise. For the next 20 minutes, Maya presented Earth's case with all the eloquence and persuasion she could muster. She highlighted Earth's strategic position as a bulwark against further Vraxian expansion into the Council's core systems. She emphasized humanity's cultural and biological contributions to the galactic community. She reminded them of Earth's faithful service in previous Council conflicts. When she finished, the chamber remained silent for several long moments. Then, one by one, the representatives began to speak. "Earth's situation is indeed grave," acknowledged the Tellerite ambassador, his porcine features set in what passed for sympathy among his kind. "But we must consider the broader strategic picture. The Vraxians have never deployed a fleet of this magnitude. Direct confrontation could trigger a full-scale war that would engulf dozens of systems." The Medusan representative's translation device flickered as they added, "Our military analysts project catastrophic casualties should the Council engage the Vraxian fleet. The sacrifice of one world, while regrettable, may be necessary to prevent the loss of many." Maya listened in growing horror as speaker after speaker offered sympathetic words while systematically dismantling any hope of intervention. They spoke of strategic realities, of the need for difficult choices, of regrettable necessities. Some offered token assistance, evacuation ships for a limited number of humans, preservation of genetic samples, cultural archives to be maintained in Council repositories. None offered what Earth actually needed: a united defense force capable of repelling the Vraxian threat. After 3 hours of debate, High Counselor Jean-Fall called for a vote. Maya watched as the results appeared on her data tablet in real time. Each negative vote another nail in Earth's coffin. The final tally was overwhelming. 289 against intervention, 58 for. "The Council has spoken," Jean-Fall announced, unable to meet Maya's eyes. "While we deeply regret Earth's situation, we cannot sanction military intervention against the Vraxian fleet." The Council will provide humanitarian assistance in the form of evacuation vessels capable of transporting approximately 50 million humans to designated refugee worlds. Additionally, we will establish cultural preservation archives to ensure humanity's achievements are not lost to the cosmos. Maya stood frozen on the platform, disbelief warring with rage. 50 million out of 7 billion, less than 1% of Earth's population, and those designated refugee worlds would likely be marginal planets where humans would struggle to survive, much less thrive. "This is not humanitarian assistance," she finally said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "This is a death sentence with a thin veneer of conscience to help you sleep at night." Representative Reeves, Genthal cautioned, "We understand your distress, but—" "No, you clearly don't," Maya interrupted, protocol forgotten in her anger. "You've just voted to sacrifice an entire world, my world, because you're afraid to stand up to a bully. Each of you sits there, secure in the knowledge that today it's Earth on the chopping block and not your home world. But ask yourselves this, when the Vraxians come for you next, and they will, who will stand with you when you've shown how quickly you abandon your allies?" The chamber erupted in outraged exclamations and defensive retorts, but Maya was beyond caring. She stepped down from the platform and marched toward the exit, Eli hurrying behind her. "Maya, wait," he called once they were in the relative privacy of the antechamber. "We need to think strategically now. The evacuation ships will save a fraction of our people while the rest are left to die," she finished bitterly. "No. If the Council won't help us, we'll have to help ourselves." She activated her secure comm link. "Get me a direct line to Earth Defense Command. Priority Omega." When the connection established, she didn't waste time on pleasantries. "General Santos, the Council has voted against intervention. We're on our own. Execute Protocol Lazarus immediately." "Understood, Captain," came the grim reply. "May I ask about evacuation assistance?" "Minimal and insulting. 50 million capacity, at best." A brief silence. "Then we fight with what we have." "Yes, we do," Maya agreed. "I'm returning to Earth immediately. We have 13 days to prepare for the fight of our lives." As she ended the transmission, she turned to find Eli watching her with an unreadable expression. "You're not surprised by the Council's decision," she observed. "I've worked in galactic politics long enough to recognize when the deck is stacked," he replied. "But I've also studied human history long enough to know something they don't." "And what's that?" A fierce smile crossed his face. "That humanity at its most dangerous is humanity with its back against the wall." As Maya's shuttle detached from Nexus Station 6 hours later, she gazed out at the glittering expanse of the galactic heart. For 43 years, humans had looked up at these stars with hope and wonder, proud to be part of something greater than themselves. Now those same stars had turned their backs on Earth in its hour of need. But as the quantum drive engaged, sending the shuttle hurtling toward home, Maya felt something unexpected replace her initial despair: determination. The Galactic Council had abandoned humanity to its fate, but humanity was far from defeated. If Earth had to stand alone against the darkness, then stand it would. And the galaxy would never forget it. The Resistance, General Isabella Santos, stood before the assembled leaders of Earth's nations, her normally immaculate uniform rumpled after 72 hours without sleep. The United Earth Defense Council chamber, buried 3 kilometers beneath the Andes Mountains, hummed with tense energy as presidents, prime ministers, and chairpersons waited for her to begin. "Ladies and gentlemen," Santos said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion, "I won't sugarcoat our situation. In 11 days, the most advanced hostile force this planet has ever encountered will arrive in our solar system with the explicit purpose of converting Earth into a world where humans cannot survive. The Galactic Council, despite our 43 years of loyal membership, has chosen to abandon us." Displays around the chamber activated, showing the Vraxian battle fleet, massive, biomechanical vessels shaped like elongated hexagons, each measuring kilometers in length. Our conventional defenses, orbital platforms, antimatter missiles, planetary shield generators, will buy us perhaps 3 hours against a force of this magnitude, Santos continued. The evacuation ships promised by the Council could save, at most 50 million people, less than 1% of our population. A ripple of anger passed through the assembled leaders. "So we're doomed," said the European Federation president, voicing what many were thinking. "No." Captain Maya Reeves stepped forward from the shadows, still wearing her diplomatic uniform. "We're not doomed. We're just going to have to save ourselves." She nodded to General Santos, who activated a new display showing schematics for a device, unlike anything the leaders had seen before. "Project Lazarus," Santos explained, "a theoretical weapons system that Earth Defense Command has been developing in secret for the past 15 years. The Chinese premier leaned forward, studying the schematics with narrowed eyes. "This technology appears far beyond our current capabilities." "That's because it is," Maya acknowledged, "or at least it was intended to be. Project Lazarus incorporates elements of technology from 17 different council species, acquired through trade, scientific exchange programs, and," she hesitated briefly, "occasionally less official channels." "You stole alien tech," the African Union Chancellor stated bluntly. "We adapted and integrated knowledge that was shared with humanity in various contexts," General Santos corrected diplomatically. "Call it an insurance policy against exactly this kind of scenario." "What exactly does Lazarus do?" asked the North American Alliance president. Dr. Aisha Okafor, Earth's leading xenotechnology researcher, stepped up to the display. Her lab coat bore the patches of a dozen international research institutions, a testament to the global collaboration that had become Earth's norm since joining the galactic community. "The Vraxians, for all their technological advancement, have a critical vulnerability," she explained. "Their ships, their weapons, even their environmental suits operate on quantum entanglement principles. It's what makes their technology so powerful: instantaneous communication and energy transfer across vast distances." She manipulated the display to show a simulation of the device in action. "Project Lazarus is designed to generate a cascading quantum disentanglement field. In simple terms, it severs the connections that make their technology function. Without those connections, their ships become inert hunks of metal and biomatter. And you're certain this will work?" the Russian Federation representative asked skeptically. Dr. Okafor and General Santos exchanged glances. "No," Okafor admitted. "The theory is sound, and our simulations show an 83% probability of success, but we've never tested it against actual Vraxian technology. Because we've never had access to it," Santos added, "and because a test of this magnitude would have been detected by the Council and raised uncomfortable questions about why Earth was developing such a weapon." Silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. They were betting the future of humanity on an untested weapon based on technology they weren't supposed to have. "There's more," Maya said, breaking the silence. "Lazarus requires an enormous amount of energy, more than our entire planetary grid produces. To power it, we'll need to shut down virtually every power generation facility on Earth and reroute that energy through a series of quantum amplifiers." "For how long?" asked the Indian consortium representative. "Approximately 6 hours," Dr. Okafor replied, "during which time Earth will be essentially defenseless and without power." The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs and outright objections. 6 hours without power meant 6 hours without communications, without transportation, without medical facilities. "People will die," someone said. "Yes," General Santos acknowledged grimly, "but far fewer than if we do nothing." For the next 4 hours, the Defense Council debated the proposal, weighing impossible choices against unthinkable consequences. In the end, though, there was only one real option. "We proceed with Project Lazarus," the United Nations Secretary General announced, speaking for the first time. "God help us all." As the leaders dispersed to begin preparations in their respective regions, Maya approached Dr. Okafor privately. "You didn't tell them everything," she said quietly. Okafor's eyes, bloodshot from days without proper rest, met Maya's. "They have enough to worry about. They deserve to know the full risks. That the quantum disentanglement field might not distinguish between Praxian technology and other advanced tech, including our own neural implants, medical devices, and the artificial organs used by millions of humans." Okafor shook her head. "That knowledge wouldn't change our decision. It would only add to the panic." Maya couldn't argue with the logic, even if she questioned the ethics. How long will it take to deploy the Lazarus network? Working round the clock. 10 days, which gives us exactly 1 day to spare before the Vraxians arrive. Then we'd better get started. The next 10 days witnessed the greatest mobilization in human history. As news of the approaching Vraxian fleet and the Council's betrayal spread, initial panic gave way to a grim determination that transcended national boundaries and old rivalries. Mining operations on the Moon and Mars were converted to produce the specialized quantum resonators needed for Lazarus. Civilian spacecraft were retrofitted as defensive platforms. Every scientist with relevant expertise was drafted into service refining the Lazarus design or developing backup systems. Most importantly, the world prepared for 6 hours of darkness. Hospitals stockpiled manual equipment and trained for operation without power. Communities organized neighborhood watches and emergency response teams. Families gathered supplies and made contingency plans. Through it all, the countdown to the Vraxian arrival ticked inexorably forward. On the 8th day, a small flotilla of Council evacuation ships arrived in Earth orbit. Their capacity was indeed limited to 50 million people, as promised. The selection process, determining who would be saved and who would be left behind, had been anticipated to cause riots and violence. Instead, something remarkable happened. "What do you mean, the ships are leaving half empty?" Maya demanded, looking at the report in disbelief. General Santos checked the figures again. Only 18 million registered for evacuation, and several million of those have since withdrawn their applications. But why? "This might be your only chance to survive." "Because they believe in Project Lazarus," Santos replied simply. "They believe we can win." Maya was stunned. The faith of her fellow humans humbled her and terrified her. What if they were wrong? What if Lazarus failed? On the final day before the Vraxian arrival, Maya found herself at the Global Defense Coordination Center beneath Geneva, watching as the last components of the Lazarus network were put into place. 360 quantum resonators had been positioned strategically around the planet and in near-Earth orbit, creating an invisible web that would, theoretically, amplify and direct the disentanglement field. Final diagnostic complete, Dr. Okafor announced, her voice hoarse from lack of sleep. All resonators functional and calibrated. Quantum harmonic synchronization at 99.7% efficiency. "Is that enough?" Maya asked. "It will have to be," Okafor replied. "We're out of time." As if to emphasize her point, alarms blared throughout the facility. On the main tactical display, a swarm of red indicators appeared at the edge of the solar system. Long-range sensors detect multiple quantum distortions consistent with Vraxian propulsion signatures, reported the sensor officer. "They're here." General Santos stepped to the command platform. "Time to Vraxian arrival at Earth orbit. At current velocity, approximately 12 hours, General." Santos nodded grimly. "Then we have 12 hours to finalize our welcome party. All stations, final preparations for Operation Lazarus. Notify all Earth governments to begin power grid shutdown procedures according to the established schedule." As the command center burst into coordinated activity, Maya found herself momentarily without a specific role. She'd delivered the bad news from the Council. She'd helped rally Earth's leaders. But now that the moment of truth approached, she felt strangely superfluous. Her thoughts were interrupted by a communication alert on her personal device. To her surprise, it was a secure transmission from Nexus Station, specifically from High Counselor Jen Fall himself. Representative Reeves. The Arcosian began, his feathered crest flat against his skull. There are no adequate words in your language or mine for what the Council has done. I want you to know that many of us fought for intervention until the final vote. Not enough of you, Maya replied coolly. No, Genfal acknowledged. Not enough. But some of us refuse to accept this abrogation of our responsibilities. His image leaned closer to the transmission device. I cannot send military assistance. That would violate the Council's direct vote. But I can inform you that a scientific expedition consisting of 3 Arcosian research vessels is currently approaching your solar system from the galactic south. Their mission is to observe and document the Vraxian activity. Maya's breath caught. Scientific vessels wouldn't stand a chance against the Vraxian fleet. Perhaps not, Genthal agreed. But Arcosian scientific vessels do carry quite sophisticated sensor arrays and communication equipment. Equipment that might, for instance, be capable of analyzing Vraxian shield frequencies and transmission protocols in real time. The implication was clear. They couldn't fight alongside Earth, but they could provide crucial intelligence. Why? Maya asked. Why risk Council censure, or worse? Genthal's multifaceted eyes seemed to shimmer with emotion. Because 43 years ago, when my people faced extinction from the Cauldron Plague, it was human medical researchers who developed the cure that saved us. Some debts transcend politics, Representative Reeves. The transmission ended, leaving Maya with a complex mixture of emotions. Earth wasn't entirely alone after all. It wasn't the full military support they'd hoped for, but it was something. A small light in the darkness. She made her way to General Santos to share the news. It's not much, Santos acknowledged after Maya explained. But having real-time intelligence on their shield configurations could be the edge we need. The next 10 hours were a blur of activity as final preparations were made. Around the world, power plants began shutting down according to a carefully orchestrated schedule. Their output were routed to massive capacitors that would power the Lazarus network. Hospitals switched to emergency generators. Defense forces moved into position. 2 hours before the Vraxians were due to reach Earth orbit, Maya stood in the Geneva Command Center, watching as the alien fleet approached. The massive vessels moved with an eerie grace that belied their size, their formation precise and unwavering. They're not even trying to hide their approach, observed General Santos. No evasive maneuvers, no attempt at stealth. They don't see us as a threat, Dr. Okafor said quietly. To them, we're already defeated. Then they're in for one hell of a surprise, Santos replied, but Maya could hear the tension beneath her confident words. The plan was simple in concept, if breathtakingly complex in execution. The Vraxians would be allowed to enter Earth orbit unopposed. Earth's conventional defenses would remain powered down to maintain the illusion of submission or helplessness. Once the entire Vraxian fleet was committed and within range of the Lazarus network, they would spring the trap. Incoming transmission from the Vraxian command ship, announced the communications officer. Put it through, Santos ordered. The main display flickered, and a beam appeared that sent an involuntary shudder through everyone in the command center. The Vraxian commander resembled a cross between an insect and a reptile, with iridescent scales covering a segmented exoskeleton. Multiple compound eyes dominated its face, and a series of manipulator appendages moved constantly around its breathing apparatus. When it spoke, its voice was processed through a translation matrix that rendered it in flat, emotionless tones. Attention Earth authorities. Your world has been selected for conversion to Vraxian environmental standards. Resistance is unnecessary and inefficient. We recognize your status as sentience and offer relocation options for a limited population sample. Designate your surrender representatives immediately to facilitate an orderly transition. Maya stepped forward. This is Captain Maya Reeves, Earth Diplomatic Representative. We received your message and wish to discuss terms. The Vraxians' appendages moved in what might have been surprise. There are no terms to discuss. You will submit coordinates for your primary population centers and governance structures. We will begin atmospheric conversion within one planetary rotation. I'm afraid that's not acceptable, Maya replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Earth is our home. We intend to keep it. The alien's breathing apparatus expanded and contracted rapidly. Laughter, perhaps. Your intentions are irrelevant. Our scans indicate your defensive capabilities are currently inactive. You have no means to prevent the conversion. Maya allowed herself a small smile. I wouldn't be so sure about that. She nodded to General Santos, who gave the order they'd all been waiting for. Initiate Lazarus. Now. Across the planet and in orbit, 360 quantum resonators activated simultaneously, drawing power from the accumulated reserves of Earth's entire energy grid. The Lazarus network came to life with a silent pulse that was invisible to the naked eye, but registered as a massive quantum disturbance on the command center's instruments. On the display, the Vraxian commander tilted its head in what might have been confusion. Then the transmission abruptly cut off. Lazarus field expanding at projected parameters, reported Dr. Okafor, her eyes fixed on her instruments. Quantum disentanglement effect reaching orbital altitude in 3, 2, 1. Everyone in the command center held their breath, watching the tactical display that showed the Vraxian fleet still moving steadily toward Earth. Did it work? Someone whispered. For an excruciating moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the Vraxian ships began to slow. Several smaller vessels tumbled out of formation, their propulsion systems clearly malfunctioning. Larger ships maintained more control but appeared to be struggling. It's working. Dr. Okafor exclaimed, rare emotion breaking through her scientific reserve. The quantum disentanglement field is disrupting their systems. But their celebration was premature. On the tactical display, the largest Vraxian vessel, presumably the command ship, continued its approach, seemingly unaffected by the Lazarus field. Why isn't it working on the command ship? General Santos demanded. Dr. Okafor's fingers flew across her controls. They appear to have some kind of quantum isolation system, something we didn't anticipate. The field is affecting them, but not enough to disable them completely. Can we increase the field strength? Maya asked. Not without burning out the entire network. Okafor replied grimly. We're already at maximum sustainable output. They watched in growing horror as the Vraxian command ship continued its inexorable approach toward Earth, even as the rest of their fleet floundered. Weapons ports on the massive vessel began to glow with gathering energy. They're charging weapons, reported the tactical officer. Targeting appears to be the primary Lazarus control node in Geneva, this facility. General Santos' face hardened. Activate planetary defense platforms. Target everything we have on that command ship. But the power grid is offline, someone protested. The defense platforms don't have enough reserve energy tow. Just do it, Santos snapped. Earth's orbital defense platforms, operating on emergency reserves, came online and targeted the Vraxian command ship. Antimatter missiles streaked toward the alien vessel, only to be casually swatted aside by its still-functioning shield system. Impact from Vraxian weapons estimated in 30 seconds, the tactical officer announced, his voice steady despite the fact that he was announcing their imminent destruction. Maya closed her eyes briefly. They had come so close. New contacts. The sensor officer's excited voice cut through the resigned silence. 3 vessels approaching at high speed from Galactic South. The tactical display updated to show 3 sleek, avian-design ships moving with impossible agility toward the Vraxian command ship. Arcosian vessels, just as Genthal had promised, but not the scientific expedition they claimed to be. These were clearly military craft, heavily armed and shielded. They're targeting the Vraxian command ship, someone shouted. The Arcosian vessels opened fire, their advanced weapons slamming into the Vraxian shields with devastating effect. The command ship pivoted ponderously, diverting its attention from Earth to this new threat. Incoming transmission from the Lee Arcosian vessel, the communications officer reported. The face of an Arcosian military commander appeared on screen. Earth Defense Command. This is Commander Trell of the Arcosian Special Operations Division. We can hold the Vraxian command ship's attention, but its shields are too strong for us to penetrate alone. If you have any reserve capabilities, now would be the time. Maya turned to Dr. Okafor. The resonators in orbit, can they be reconfigured to focus the disentanglement field on just the command ship? Okafor's eyes widened. Theoretically, yes, but it would mean sacrificing the global field. The rest of their fleet would start recovering. Based on their current state, how long before they'd be operational again? 20 minutes, minimum. General Santos nodded decisively. That's a gamble we'll have to take. Do it, Doctor. Okafor's hands moved rapidly over her controls, reconfiguring orbital resonators to focus on Vraxian command ship. Narrow beam configuration will increase field strength by 300%, but will collapse the global field matrix. On the tactical display, they watched as the Arcosian vessels engaged in a deadly dance with the much larger Vraxian command ship, absorbing punishing hits while continuing to harass the enemy. One Arcosian vessel took a direct hit and spiraled away, trailing debris. Resonators reconfigured, Okafor announced, initiating focused disentanglement pulse in 3, 2, 1. A concentrated beam of quantum distortion, invisible except on their specialized sensors, lanced from the orbital resonators directly at the Vraxian command ship. This time, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The massive vessel's shields flickered violently, then collapsed entirely. Its weapons went dark, and it began to drift aimlessly. The remaining Arcosian vessels wasted no time. They concentrated their fire on the now vulnerable command ship, targeting its propulsion and weapons systems with surgical precision. The rest of the Vraxian fleet is beginning to recover, warned the tactical officer. Estimated time to partial functionality: 15 minutes. That's all we need, General Santos said grimly. Reroute all remaining power to the conventional defense platforms. Target every recovering Vraxian vessel, priority on those closest to regaining propulsion. Earth's defense platforms came to life again, their weapons targeting the disoriented and vulnerable Vraxian fleet. Without their sophisticated shields and countermeasures, the alien vessels were suddenly far more vulnerable to humanity's relatively primitive weapons. For the next 12 minutes, the command center watched as a combination of Earth's defense platforms and the two remaining Arcosian vessels methodically disabled the Vraxian fleet's critical systems. Ships that couldn't be completely neutralized were crippled enough to prevent them from threatening Earth. Last Vraxian vessel confirmed neutralized, the tactical officer finally reported, disbelief evident in his voice. The fleet is defeated. A stunned silence fell over the command center, broken eventually by someone's choked sob of relief. Then cheers erupted, people embracing each other, some crying openly. Maya found herself unable to join the celebration immediately. The magnitude of what they had accomplished, and how close they had come to annihilation, left her momentarily speechless. Humanity had stood alone against the darkness, with only a handful of allies who had defied their own government to help. As power gradually returned to Earth's cities, Maya looked at the faces around her, exhausted, jubilant, still processing their brush with extinction. They had survived, against all odds. But this was only the beginning. "We've won the battle," she murmured to herself. "Now comes the harder part, winning the peace." The triumph. 3 days after the battle, Maya Reeves stood in a cavernous hangar beneath the Rocky Mountains, watching as technicians swarmed over the captured Vraxian command ship. The massive vessel had been towed to Earth by a fleet of repurposed mining tugs, its systems still dormant thanks to carefully maintained quantum disruption fields. "Incredible," breathed Dr. Okafor beside her. "Their technology is even more advanced than our intelligence suggested." General Santos approached, accompanied by a tall Arcosian officer, Commander Trell, whose timely intervention had helped turn the tide of battle. "The good news," Santos announced without preamble, "is that the remaining Vraxian vessels have been secured. The bad news is that we've intercepted quantum communications, suggesting the Vraxian Dominion is preparing a second fleet. Maya's heart sank. How long do we have? Months, not days, Santos replied. But we can't count on surprising them twice. They'll have countermeasures for the Lazarus field next time. Commander Trell's feathered crest rippled with what Maya had learned was the Arcosian equivalent of grim amusement. The Vraxians are not accustomed to failure. They will return with overwhelming force. And the Council? Maya asked, though she already knew the answer. Officially, the Arcosian Defense Fleet acted without authorization. Trell replied. 3 ship commanders have been formally censured for disobeying the non-intervention directive. Unofficially, High Counselor Zhenfall sends his congratulations and warns that no further direct assistance can be expected. Maya nodded, unsurprised. The Council was saving face, maintaining the fiction that they hadn't completely abandoned one of their member worlds. Then we're still on our own, Dr. Okafor concluded. Not entirely, said a new voice. They turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows near the captured ship, distinctly non-human, but not Arcosian either. The being was tall and slender, with skin that seemed to shift between deep purple and midnight blue. 4 arms were folded across its chest, and its eyes, all 6 of them, glowed with an inner light. Ambassador Velsharen, Maya gasped, recognizing the representative of the Medusan conclave, one of the oldest and most technologically advanced species in the Council. What are you doing here? Officially, I am not here, the Medusan replied, its voice melodious despite the translator. Just as the 3 Nofran scientists in your secondary research facility examining the Vraxian propulsion systems are not here. Just as the Tellarite engineering team helping to restore your power grid is not here. Maya exchanged confused glances with General Santos. I don't understand. The Council voted against helping us. The Council, Velsharen said delicately, is not the same as its individual members. Many of us found the vote morally unsatisfactory. You're defying the Council? Santos asked incredulously. We are interpreting its directives with creative flexibility, the Medusan corrected. The vote specified no military intervention against the Vraxian fleet. It said nothing about scientific exchange, humanitarian assistance, or technological consultation following the conflict. The alien gestured toward the captured Vraxian vessel. This ship represents the most advanced Vraxian technology ever captured intact. Multiple Council species have a vested interest in studying it, for purely scientific purposes, of course. Of course, Maya agreed, beginning to understand. And if such scientific study happens to yield insights that might help Earth defend itself against future aggression, well, all 6 of the Medusan's eyes blinked in sequence, her version of a shrug. Science often has unexpected applications. For the first time since the battle, Maya felt genuine hope. Earth wasn't being embraced with open arms, but neither was it being completely abandoned. Individual Council members had found a way to help within the constraints of the official position. Ambassador, she said formally, Earth welcomes scientific and humanitarian cooperation with our galactic neighbors. The Medusan's skin rippled in patterns that the translator interpreted as pleased. Excellent. Now, there is much to discuss and little time. The Vraxian Dominion will not take this defeat lightly. Over the next several weeks, Earth became the center of what officially couldn't be called an alliance but functionally operated as one. Ships from 6 Council species arrived in the solar system, ostensibly on observation or scientific missions. With them came specialists in various technologies, strategic advisors, and diplomatic representatives operating without official sanction. The captured Vraxian vessels proved to be a treasure trove of advanced technology, much of it beyond human understanding, but readily interpreted by their more experienced alien visitors. Under Dr. Okafor's coordination, mixed teams of human and alien scientists worked around the clock to adapt what they learned to Earth's defense needs. 42 days after the battle, Maya was summoned to a secure conference room deep within the Geneva complex. There she found General Santos, Dr. Okafor, and representatives from each of the unofficial alien delegations. "We've completed our analysis of the Vraxian communication logs," began a Tellarite engineer without preamble. "They confirm our worst fears. A second fleet has been dispatched, 3 times the size of the first." "Estimated arrival?" Santos asked. 63 days, replied Ambassador Velcheran. "They are moving more cautiously this time, using indirect routes to avoid detection." "Can we enhance the Lazarus field? Make it strong enough to overcome whatever countermeasures they've developed?" Maya asked. Dr. Okafor shook her head. "The Vraxians will have adapted their quantum entanglement systems to resist our disruption techniques. We need something new." "Perhaps not new," interjected a Nofran scientist, their gelatinous form pulsing with bioluminescent patterns, "but unexpected. The Vraxians' greatest weakness is not technological but psychological. They cannot conceive of defeat. Their strategy will be to overwhelm through superior force, not to innovate." "What are you suggesting?" Santos asked. The alien representatives exchanged glances, or their species equivalents, before Ambassador Velcheran spoke. "We propose Operation Trojan," the Medusan said, "using the captured command ship as a delivery system for a massively enhanced version of your quantum disentanglement technology, planted directly in the heart of the second Vraxian fleet." The plan, as it unfolded, was audacious to the point of insanity. The captured Vraxian command ship would be minimally repaired and programmed to return to the Dominion, ostensibly as a damaged vessel retreating from the failed attack. The Vraxians, arrogant in their technological superiority, would never suspect that their own returning ship had been compromised. Once incorporated into the second fleet, the ship's modified systems would activate, generating a quantum disentanglement field far more powerful and sophisticated than the original Lazarus network. The field would be specifically calibrated to the Vraxian fleet's systems, rendering their weapons, shields, and propulsion useless at the critical moment. "It's a modern-day Trojan horse," Maya observed. "With one critical difference," Commander Trell noted grimly. "The original required Greek soldiers to hide inside. This one will require a living crew to ensure the system activates at precisely the right moment. Automated systems would be detected by Vraxian security protocols." A heavy silence fell over the room as the implication became clear. Someone would have to pilot the vessel back to the Vraxian fleet, almost certainly a one-way mission. "I'll do it," Dr. Okafor said quietly. All eyes turned to her in surprise. "You're the leading expert on the technology," Santos protested. "We need you here." "Which is precisely why it must be me," Okafor countered. "The quantum mechanics involved in this enhanced system are beyond anyone else's full understanding. If something goes wrong, if adaptations need to be made in the field, only I would have the knowledge to do so." Before anyone could argue further, Ambassador Velcheran raised a hand. "The mission would not require human sacrifice. My species has developed consciousness transfer technology that would allow Dr. Okafor to operate remotely, at least until the quantum disentanglement field activates, at which point the connection would be severed. So I'd be controlling a surrogate body on the ship?" Okafor asked, intrigued. "Not precisely. You would project your consciousness into the ship's systems directly, operating as its controlling intelligence. It is not without risk. The separation from your physical body for extended periods can be psychologically taxing, but it eliminates the need for physical presence." The planning for Operation Trojan consumed the next 7 weeks. The captured command ship was carefully repaired to appear functional, while secretly being completely reconfigured internally. The enhanced quantum disentanglement system, Lazarus 2.0, as the technical teams had dubbed it, was installed in a heavily shielded central chamber. Meanwhile, Earth continued its defensive preparations. The original Lazarus network was rebuilt and enhanced as a fallback measure. Planetary shield generators, based on adapted Arcosian technology, were constructed at strategic points around the globe. The orbital defense platforms were upgraded with weapons systems derived from the captured Vraxian vessels. If the Trojan plan failed, Earth would not be defenseless, but their chances of repelling a fleet 3 times larger than the first remained slim. 17 days before the projected arrival of the second Vraxian fleet, Operation Trojan commenced. Dr. Okafor was connected to the Medusan consciousness transfer device, a crystalline structure that pulsed with strange energies, while the repaired Vraxian command ship launched from Earth orbit. In the Geneva Command Center, Maya watched the ship's progress on the tactical display. Okafor's physical body lay in a medical pod nearby, monitored by a team of human and alien physicians, while her consciousness directed the massive alien vessel toward its rendezvous with the approaching Vraxian fleet. "How long will it take?" Maya asked Ambassador Velsharan, who stood beside her. "Approximately 12 days to intercept the fleet, assuming they maintain their current course," the Medusan replied. "Then perhaps 3 to 5 days for the ship to be integrated into their formation and pass their security protocols. And Dr. Okafor will be in there the entire time. Her consciousness will be." Time perception is different in the transferred state. Subjectively, it may feel like considerably less time to her. The mission progressed with agonizing slowness from the perspective of those waiting on Earth. For 10 days, regular status updates came from the infiltration vessel as Dr. Okafor navigated it through the outer solar system and beyond. On the 11th day, the transmissions became more sporadic as the ship approached Vraxian sensor range. Then, silence. "Last transmission received 26 hours ago," reported the communications officer on the 15th day. "No further contact." Could they have detected the deception? General Santos asked the assembled alien advisors. "Unlikely," Commander Trull replied. "More probably, the ship has entered the Vraxian security envelope, where all communications are monitored." Dr. Okafor would maintain communication silence to avoid detection. They had no choice but to wait and hope. The Vraxian fleet was now projected to reach Earth in just under 5 days. If Operation Trojan had failed, they would know soon enough. On the 18th day, with the Vraxian fleet less than 48 hours from Earth, Dr. Okafor's body suddenly convulsed in its medical pod, her vitals spiking dramatically. "Neural connection destabilizing," reported one of the Medusan physicians, attempting to strengthen the link. For several tense minutes, the medical team worked to maintain Okafor's connection to the distant vessel. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, her readings stabilized. Her eyes opened. "I'm back," she whispered hoarsely. "It's done." "The Trojan," General Santos demanded. "Did you activate it?" Okafor nodded weakly. "The ship was integrated into their fleet formation yesterday. I had to wait until their flagship initiated its final systems check. That's when all vessels synchronize their quantum networks." "And the disentanglement field?" Maya asked. A small smile crossed Okafor's exhausted face. "Activated and spreading. Their entire command structure was linked when it initiated. By now, it should have propagated through the majority of their fleet." Ambassador Velsharan's skin rippled with complex patterns that the translator couldn't quite capture, something between excitement and vindication. "Then we wait," the Medusan said. "And we see." They didn't have to wait long. 6 hours later, long-range sensors detected massive energy fluctuations within the Vraxian fleet. Ships began falling out of formation, their propulsion systems failing or behaving erratically. Some vessels crashed into each other, unable to maintain navigational control. "It worked," breathed General Santos, watching the tactical display in amazement. "The entire fleet is in disarray." But the celebration was premature. Even as they watched, a smaller group of vessels, perhaps 20 out of the nearly 300 in the fleet, broke away from the chaos, their systems apparently unaffected by the quantum disruption. Elite guard vessels, Commander Trull identified grimly. They operate on isolated systems, a redundancy measure for precisely this kind of scenario. The 20 ships formed a tight formation and accelerated toward Earth, their trajectory leaving no doubt about their intentions. "They're still coming," Maya said, her momentary elation fading. "Can our defenses handle 20 ships?" "Better than 300, Santos replied grimly. "But these will be their most advanced vessels with their best crews. This isn't over yet." For the next 36 hours, Earth prepared for what they hoped would be the final battle. The Lazarus network was brought to full readiness. The planetary shield generators were charged. Every functional defense platform was armed and positioned. When the remnants of the Vraxian fleet arrived in Earth orbit, they found not a vulnerable planet ripe for conquest, but a world bristling with defenses and flanked by ships from half a dozen Council species, still officially there as observers, but their positioning left little doubt about their true intentions. The lead Vraxian vessel transmitted a message that was broadcast to every communication device on the planet. "Humans," the transmission began, the translator rendering the alien's voice in the same flat tones as before. "You have damaged Vraxian property and interfered with Vraxian territorial expansion. This violation cannot be permitted. You will surrender immediately or face extinction." The response came not from military command or political leadership, but from Captain Maya Reeves, who had started this journey as Earth's representative to a council that abandoned her world and now stood as the voice of a planet that had saved itself. "Vraxian fleet," she replied, her image transmitted to the alien vessels, "your ultimatum is rejected. Earth is protected, not just by our own considerable defenses, but by a coalition of species who recognize our right to exist. You lost your first fleet to a world you thought defenseless. Your second fleet has been largely neutralized by our technology. The ships you have remaining are outmatched and surrounded. We offer you a single opportunity to retreat. There will not be another." For several long moments, there was no response. Then, to everyone's shock, the Vraxian vessels began to power down their weapon systems. Slowly, their formation turned away from Earth and began accelerating toward the outer solar system. "They're leaving," Santos said incredulously. "Not out of fear," Ambassador Vel-Sharan observed. "Out of calculation. The Vraxians operate on strict efficiency principles. They have determined that the resource expenditure to conquer Earth now exceeds the potential value. They are cutting their losses." As the alien vessels disappeared into the depths of space, cheers erupted throughout the command center. Indeed, throughout the world, as news of the Vraxian retreat spread. Earth had not merely survived. It had decisively repelled one of the most feared forces in the galaxy. 3 days later, Maya found herself once again before the Galactic Council, this time not as a supplicant begging for help, but as the representative of a world that had proven its worth in the most definitive way possible. High Counselor Junfall called the emergency session to order. This council convenes to address recent developments concerning Earth and the Vraxian incursion into Council-affiliated space. Maya stood on the central platform, straight-backed and clear-eyed. The same representatives who had voted to abandon Earth now watched her with newfound respect, and in some cases, clear discomfort. "Distinguished representatives," she began, "I come before you not to recriminate or assign blame for decisions made in the past. Instead, I am here to inform you of humanity's new position within the galactic community." A murmur rippled through the assembly at her directness. Earth has successfully repelled 2 Vraxian invasion fleets, the first alone save for the courageous intervention of a few allies acting against this council's directive, the second with the unofficial assistance of several council species operating outside official channels. She paused, letting her gaze sweep across the chamber. These events have demonstrated 2 critical facts. First, that humanity possesses technological innovation and adaptive capability beyond what many of you believed possible. Second, that the current structure of the Council, particularly its mutual defense provisions, is fundamentally flawed. Outraged exclamations came from several representatives, but Maya continued undeterred. "Therefore, I am authorized to inform you that Earth is establishing a new alliance, the Mutual Defense Cooperative. Several Council species have already expressed interest in dual membership. Others are welcome to apply, provided they accept our core principle, that an attack on one member world constitutes an attack on all, with no exceptions, no qualifications, and no political calculations. The chamber erupted in chaos as representatives argued, protested, and conferred frantically with their aides. High Counselor Junfall banged his ceremonial staff repeatedly, trying to restore order. "You cannot simply form a competing alliance," thundered the Tellarite ambassador. "It undermines the very structure of interstellar governance." "We can, and we have," Maya replied calmly. "Earth remains open to Council membership and cooperation, but we will never again place our security solely in the hands of an organization that abandoned us when we needed it most." As the uproar continued, Maya felt a strange sense of peace. Earth had faced extinction and emerged stronger, not just technologically but diplomatically. The species that had secretly helped them, the Arcosians, Medusans, Nofrans, and others, had already committed to the new alliance, recognizing in humanity a resilience and innovation that complemented their own ancient wisdom and established technologies. Order. Genfall finally managed to silence the chamber. "Representative Reeves, while I understand Earth's displeasure with recent events, this unilateral action threatens the stability of interstellar relations that has prevailed for millennia." "With respect, High Counselor," Maya responded, "it was not Earth that threatened that stability. It was this Council's failure to uphold its most basic principle, mutual defense and protection, that did so. We are simply ensuring that such a failure never happens again." 3 hours of heated debate followed, but Maya stood firm. Earth would not disband its new alliance, nor would it apologize for taking steps to ensure its own security. By the session's end, it was clear that a fundamental shift had occurred in the galactic power structure. The Council remained, but its monopoly on interstellar governance was broken. As Maya's shuttle departed Nexus Station for the return journey to Earth, she received a private transmission from High Counselor Genfall. "You have changed things," the Arcosian said without preamble. "For better or worse remains to be seen, but I suspect the former. My people will formally join your cooperative within the week. Council position be damned." "We be honored to have you," Maya replied, "though it might cost you your position as High Counselor." Genfall's feathered crest rose in what Maya now recognized as amusement, a price gladly paid. "Some of us have grown too comfortable in our power, too cautious in our thinking. Your species has reminded us of virtues we have forgotten: courage, innovation, the refusal to accept injustice even when wrapped in the veneer of diplomatic necessity." As the transmission ended, Maya turned her gaze toward the viewport, where Earth was just becoming visible, a blue jewel against the vastness of space. Less than a month ago, she had made this same journey in despair, carrying news of the Council's betrayal to a world facing extinction alone. Now she returned in triumph, not just because humanity had survived, but because it had transformed its place in the cosmos. Earth was no longer the junior partner seeking approval and protection from ancient, established powers. It had become a catalyst for change, a beacon for species who remembered that principles mattered more than political expediency. The Galactic Council had abandoned humanity to its fate. In doing so, they had unwittingly helped forge something stronger, more just, and ultimately more enduring than their comfortable, compromised institution had become. As her shuttle began its descent toward Geneva, Maya smiled. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but perhaps the greatest wonder of all was humanity's stubborn refusal to accept defeat, even when the stars themselves seemed to turn against them. The galaxy had tried to break them. Instead, they had remade the galaxy.